Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to walk through a quick introduction on how to use the AnnieMap app to animate a map from GPX data that we've downloaded from the internet. So to get started, we're going to load some GPX data from Strava. I'm bringing up a Safari browser here, and you can see that I've got a route in my Strava that goes through the city of Tokyo in a spiral pattern. It's called the Tokyo Tree Trek route, and this is a route that was created by someone by the name of Lee Basford, and he made it public and available on Strava. So the first step we need to do to get this data into AnnieMap is to download this route in GPX format. And you can do that from within Strava by clicking on this disclosure arrow and then simply clicking Export GPX. That downloads the GPX file, and the next step is to load it into AnnieMap. So I'm going to bring up AnnieMap. We're launching the app as though it's the very first time the app has ever been loaded. We'll click our AnnieMap to get started, and we'll just make this full screen. The first thing we want to do is load that GPX file we just downloaded. So we'll come over here to the Load GPX button, and then we're going to navigate to that file that we just downloaded in my Downloads folder. Click Open. And then now we've loaded that route. If this is your first time using AnnieMap, a quick walkthrough on the workflow is over here on the left-hand side. We have a panel of buttons, and this is the application control mode panel. And this basically allows us to toggle the map between different kinds of modes. This top mode with the map icon is just sort of the explore mode. And it gives us a slider, allows us to kind of go through the route. And you can see, where this marker is going, and it allows us to explore the route. If we tap on this map button, or if we tap anywhere on the map, it'll switch to give us a elevation profile, and tapping again gives us sort of a full screen view of the map, and then tapping one more time brings us back to having our application control mode panel on the left and our save and load panel on the right. What I want to note first is this GPX file that we're loading was created by a stranger. I don't know if this was recorded with an actual GPS device or if this route was created using some route creation software. Maybe it was created within Strava itself. Maybe it was recorded on a GPS device like a Garmin. Maybe it was recorded using an Apple Watch. I have no idea where this data came from. But when I look at the elevation profile, and I hit the little rabbit button, I can toggle to see what the speed of the route is. Now notice you can see that the speed values are ridiculous. It's going up to 200 miles per hour. There's no way anyone on a bicycle was going 200 miles per hour. But what I can see from this is that the speed is oscillating quickly between fast and slow. Basically, this is someone probably going through the city on a bicycle and coming to many, many stoplights. The point of bringing this up is that when we animate the route, we don't want the marker to be speeding up and slowing down all the time. And AnnieMap has two different animation modes, one where we can animate linearly in time, so that 1 second in the GPX file corresponds to a scaled second in the video, or AnnieMap can animate in distance mode, where basically 1 mile in the GPX file is going to correspond to a scaled second in the output video. Because this route is speeding up and slowing down so frequently, when we actually run our animation, we're going to set it up so that it animates in distance and not animates in time. We'll take care of that right away, actually. We'll come over here to our animation settings mode, and if we click the screwdriver and wrench, this allows us to bring up this button here that shows a clock. Currently, AnnieMap is set to animate in time, and what we want to do is animate in distance. So tapping that button once changes it from a clock to a ruler, and now you can see that we're going to be animating in distance rather than time. Okay, so going back to our app control mode, generally speaking, the workflow goes from top to bottom. We used the Explore mode to load our GPX file. If we wanted to trim the GPX file, if we want to shave off some of the beginning or the end, we could use the scissors to trim it. This book here is for loading JSON files. Once we've actually saved the AnnieMap in JSON format, you can load the AnnieMap, including all of the settings as a JSON file. And this final button here allows us to write the AnnieMap as a JSON file. The guitar button that shows the metal guitar, the jazz guitar, and the acoustic guitar is our settings button, right? There's many different styles and settings of music, and we're going to change the style and settings of our app. Clicking this up brings a panel of buttons at the bottom and a panel of buttons on the right. The panel of buttons on the right is related to the style settings of the map. So if I click on the eyes, this allows us to select what map type we want. Maybe we'll switch to a hybrid mode that gives us both sort of a satellite view of the map as well as having annotations on the map for locations of interest. The other buttons here are related to what features we want to hide and show on the map. So if we want to hide the scale, notice over here in the top left corner, we can sort of turn on and off that map scale. We can turn on and off a compass on the map. We can toggle whether the map is 3D or 2D, and we can turn on and off points of interest. In this case, we'll leave the points of interest on, but we'll turn off the traffic, because if there's traffic jams, I don't actually care, and I don't want to see those traffic jams on the map. And this final button is whether or not the route that we're drawing appears above or below the annotations on the map. And to kind of assist with the three-dimensional feel of it, we're going to put the route below the annotations on the map. Okay, other style settings we might want to change is sort of the color of the route, the type of marker that we're animating, and the color of the marker that we're animating. So let's first start by changing the route line thickness. We'll make this a little bit smaller, maybe around 4 points looks good. We'll change the color to something that's easy to see. Here I'm going to pick sort of like a strawberry color that has nice high contrast on the map, and it makes the route easy to see. This is a bicycle route, so we want to change the marker from being a person to being a bicycle. So we'll select the bicycle, and we'll change the color of that bicycle icon. Maybe we'll make it maroon. Okay, this button here that shows the link, this is going to specify how the marker changes its orientation as we animate. So right now it's set to locked, meaning that the marker is not going to rotate or reflect, but it gives us a couple options. We can rotate with the route, in which case the little bicycle icon is going to rotate depending on what direction the route is facing. Or we can have it reflect. So basically, switch between left and right as it moves through. I can illustrate this by going back to our Explorer mode. Right now, if I move the marker through the route, you can see that that marker is toggling between, pointing to the left and pointing to the right. If instead we were to use the rotate with route, you would see that that bicycle icon is now rotating such that it appears to always be pointing along the path of the route. Okay, so we'll go back to reflect with route, and we'll set a couple more style settings. This is related to setting a tail. We'll leave that for a future instructional video. But what I do want to do is I want to turn on and off these start and end markers. So right now you can see we have a green checkered flag at the start, and we have a red checkered flag at the finish. I don't actually want to have any markers at the start and the finish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to long press on this button and long press on that button, and it makes those icons disappear. Some other settings we might want to change. These settings here control the look and the feel of the app, so we can change the colors of the buttons and the colors of the background. I don't actually want to change that now, but what I do want to do is increase the size of the buttons. It'll just make them easier to see in this video. So we'll crank that all the way up to 72 points. Okay, so now we've got nice big buttons. The next step now is to plan how we want the camera to follow the marker as we animate the route. And we do that using waypoints. If I click on the waypoint button here, it brings us into the waypoint mode, and we get a new panel of buttons up here in the top left that are related to how we program the waypoints. If I press the waypoints table button, you see that we currently have two waypoints, one at the very start of the route and one at the very end of the route. The number here indicates what sample number we are corresponding to in the GPX file that we've loaded. So you can see that the GPX file we loaded contains 1,595 different GPS coordinates. And currently, the final waypoint is observing the map from 12,000 meters with a pitch angle of 0 degrees and a heading angle of 0. So this is the compass heading, and then this is the pitch relative to the Earth. What we'll do to get started is we'll change this value to 360, and that way as we go through the route, the compass heading is going to rotate a full 360 degrees. In this waypoints table, you can basically edit these numbers by using the keyboard. So right now I just changed it to 1200 and that zooms the camera way in, or I could add a couple zeros there and we'll zoom way out. So these are editable text fields that you can use the keyboard to modify, or you could use these buttons. Tapping this button brings up a slider, and now if I adjust this slider, I'm adjusting the elevation above the Earth of the camera. I'm going to bring that back to our initial 1200. This is our default setting. So this is one way we can program waypoints, is by using this table and editing these numbers either manually with the keyboard or using the buttons and adjusting the sliders. But we have another way of editing the waypoint, and that's using the binocular mode or the observation mode. So right now you can see I have the second waypoint selected, and when I tap the binoculars button, now anytime I adjust the map using the trackpad, right, we're going to be recording the exact position of the camera as we've changed the perspective. And when I tap this binoculars button a second time, we stop that recording. And now if I bring up the waypoints table, you can see that we've changed the value of all these parameters. What I'll do is adjust the map so that when we're looking at it here, we have a good view of the Imperial Palace. And maybe we'll come in and zoom a little closer and pitch the angle pretty high up. All right, so now I've adjusted it to basically a 70-degree pitch and at 340 degrees. I'm going to bring this back to 360 so that we have a full 360 animation. The last button in this waypoints panel here shows a chart. And if I tap that chart button, it gives me a set of graphs that shows how the camera is going to fly through the route when we animate it. And right now we only have two waypoints, a starting waypoint and an ending waypoint. So the way the camera is going to fly is along a linear path where the elevation is linearly decreasing and the pitch angle is linearly increasing and the compass heading is linearly increasing. As we add more waypoints, we'll deviate from simple linear charts here, and we'll show that in just a second. So maybe what we'll do now is we'll add more waypoints to make the flight pattern a little more interesting. So we can hide these charts and go back to our view of the map. And what I want to do is I notice there's a couple really interesting places here. First, you can see we've got the Japan National Stadium. It'd be pretty cool if the AnnieMap route goes past this stadium and shows it at a perspective where we can kind of look inside the stadium. So what I've done is I've adjusted the map to kind of get the perspective that I like. And now I'm going to tap on the map to add a waypoint at that point. You can see we've added a new point to our table here, and we've set it at an elevation of almost 1,800 meters with a pitch angle of 50 degrees and at 434 degrees on the compass heading. We can look at this on the chart and you can see that the compass heading is quickly going to increase up to 430 and then fall back slowly to 360. That's not really what I want. What I want is the compass to slowly rotate from 0 to 360. So let's adjust this value here so that it's less than 360. Maybe somewhere around 100 will look good. Okay, and now you can see our compass heading is sort of back to moving along a linear path. This pitch angle, maybe it's a little too high, so I'm going to hide these charts and we'll observe this. We'll maybe bring this down a little bit. Maybe somewhere around 35 degrees looks good. Okay, so we've now added a third waypoint to our camera flight pattern. Let's add a fourth one. And I noticed that there's some other cool parts of Tokyo over here, maybe as it comes over onto this island. Wouldn't it be neat if, as we come onto this island, we're observing from way up above? That looks pretty good. Let's add a waypoint there. And again, let's adjust this angle so that we're closer to being linear in compass angle as we go through the route. Right now, you can see that compass heading is basically flat through this region. What I want is I want it to be sort of linear so that the compass is constantly rotating at a constant speed. So let's change this compass heading from 145 to maybe 280. And now you can see we've got a nice straight line there. Looking at the flight path, you can see the camera is going to start from a moderate elevation, come close to the Earth, and then go way up towards, almost outer space, and then come zooming back down to Earth. Because this vertical scale of this chart is very large, it's difficult to see what's happening right here. And it's possible that maybe the camera is going to run into the Earth because it looks like it's getting very close to zero. We can check for that by toggling this chart from being in linear to logarithmic units. And we can do that by long tapping on this airplane icon. It's going to shift this chart into a logarithmic space. And now you can see that, yeah, we do actually have a problem. The camera is going to run into the Earth and try and take us below the Earth's surface. That's not good. We could fix this in one of a couple of different ways, right? We could either adjust these waypoints so that we get a nice smooth plot here, or we can adjust the calculus of these curves. And we can do that by bringing up the custom calculus controls, which is this wand and stars. If the slope of this curve was identically zero right here, we'd probably avoid that problem. And we can do that with our custom calculus controls. Let's set the slope of this point to be zero by bringing up our custom calculus controls and setting the slope at that point to zero. You can now see that we have a nice smooth curve and we've avoided crashing into the Earth. Another simple fix though, I'm going to long press on that button to go back to the automatic magic mode where the software is calculating the route without us providing any custom calculus controls. We can probably fix this issue simply by decreasing the elevation of the third waypoint. So if we bring this closer to the Earth, maybe around, looks like around 30,000 meters, 35,000 meters, we've moved this point down a little bit lower, and that resolved the problem where the camera was crashing into the Earth here. So you can see we have many different ways to try and fix problems that might arise as we're programming how the camera will fly. Okay, right now I feel like we've got a pretty good flight path. It's going to look interesting. One concern I have is that this third data point is going to come zooming back towards the Earth as we get to the finish. So I maybe want to bring this a little bit closer to minimize how abruptly the elevation is going to be changing at the end. So we'll maybe bring that down closer to 8,000 meters or so. Okay, now let's go and adjust the animation settings and we'll see what we've got so far. If I come over here to the play pause button, I can click the play button and it will start the animation. You can see that as the animation is running, the camera's position is continuously changing as the marker is moving about the route. The first thing I notice is that it's a very jittery motion, right? The marker is moving really kind of too fast and the map is struggling to keep up with redrawing the three-dimensional map data. The reason for this is that the GPX file that we loaded only had 1,600 samples. That's not very dense, considering that this is a route that's going over probably 50 kilometers or something like that. So what we want to do is we want to slow down the map animation so that the animation doesn't appear quite so jittery. And we could do that very easily by adjusting some of the animation settings. If I press the wrench and screwdriver button, I get a gear button here that allows me to adjust the speed of the animation. And right now it's sort of set to this equal symbol, meaning that every single time we redraw the map, we're going to advance the animation by 1 GPS sample. What we want to do is actually slow this down, maybe bring this down to 8x, so that between each GPS sample in the data, we're going to create 8 new samples to interpolate and smooth the motion. So if I now come over here and rerun the animation, we should see that it appears considerably smoother. Effectively, the animation is now running 8 times slower, but that's okay because when we record and save the final animation, we can choose how long we want the final video to be. Okay, so we've adjusted the speed of that. That looks like it's sort of smoother and better. Let's adjust a few of the other animation parameters to make the animation a little more cinematic. Right now, when we run the animation, the marker is always going to be in the center of the field of view. But what we want to do is we want to decouple the camera animation from the marker animation. And that will allow the marker to wiggle around on the map. And we do that using this filter button. If I press the filter button, it allows us to adjust a slider that is going to increase or decrease the decoupling between the camera and the marker. And hopefully, let me zoom out and look down on this map while I'm adjusting that parameter. You can see that when I press this button, it brings up this sort of green line on the map. This is the route that the camera is going to follow, and the marker is going to follow the pink route that we've drawn on the screen. So as I bring this parameter up and further to a larger number, we're increasing the decoupling between the camera animation and the marker animation. So now if I come over and we'll jump back to the start and press play, you'll see that the marker is moving in a slightly decoupled way from the camera. When the camera elevation is very high up, right, it's less observable. But if we jump ahead in the route to some place where the camera is closer to the earth and now press play, you'll notice that the marker is not in the center of the map, but it's now over here in the top. Because again, we have decoupled the camera animation from the marker animation. And this is looking pretty good. Now, as we run this animation, it's going to look like the marker is wiggling about on this map. That makes it look a little more cinematic, as though the camera was maybe a bird flying overhead and the camera's not perfectly following the marker. Once we've adjusted these settings to something that we like, and there's a few other settings we can tweak here, I'll leave these for now, but if we wanted to try and speed things up, we could go to a 60 frame per second animation, a 10 frame per second animation. You would adjust these settings depending on what kind of system you're running. If you're running on a newer, very powerful MacBook Pro, you can probably crank that up to 60 frames per second. If you're running on some older hardware, or it looks like the system can't draw the map at a fast enough rate, you might want to slow this down to something more like 10 frames per second. Mileage may vary. So if you're running this on a very old iPhone, or you're running this on a modern iPhone 16, you would adjust this frame rate to match the performance of the system that you're working with. Okay, so the last thing to do is now record this animation. Let's jump back to the very beginning. And at the very first time we record, we need to request the user's permission to record the screen. So when I tap this button, we're going to get a little pop-up that's going to request user permission to record the screen. If you click don't allow, then AnnieMap won't be able to record the screen. So of course we want to click the record screen button. What we'll want to do now is we've only started recording after we've pressed that record screen button. So what we want to do is actually jump back to the very beginning and start recording again. Now, of course, we've slowed down the animation 8x to try and smooth the marker animation. And so this recording process is going to take a little while. I'll sort of take a little break and I'll let this run. And in the video that I'll share, I will speed up this part so that we don't have to wait several minutes to get to the end of the animation. Okay, we have now finished running our animation, and it's time to save the file. Now that we have finished the recording of the animation, a new button has popped up here in the animation control panel that looks like a pencil and a notepad writing. That's the button we used for saving. And when I tap that button, it brings up a new panel, one that has just a pencil and notepad. This allows us to save the video as recorded. In this case, it took us a very long time to run this animation, so pressing this button is going to result in saving a video file that's very long. What we really want to do is we want to resample this video to make the video much shorter in time. And for that, we use the stopwatch button. Pressing this button gives us a couple options of how we want to format this output video. Let's first select a frame rate, and I want to generate a video that has 60 frames per second. And maybe I want this entire animation to only last 60 seconds long. So it'll be a 1 minute long video at 60 frames per second. When we recorded this animation, it took 213 seconds, so that's fairly long. Let's adjust the slider to get to 60, and then we'll have a 60-second animation. If I now tap the pencil and notepad button, AnnieMap will start resampling that video to generate our requested output video that is 60 seconds long and has 60 frames per second. It takes a little while to perform this video compression, so just be patient while AnnieMap crunches the numbers. And then once it's finished crunching the numbers, it will bring up a standard save dialog window that allows us to save the video file wherever we would like on our file system. Okay, we have now finished saving that video file, and we're free to download it or save it wherever we like. Here I'll just click save and we'll drop it into the downloads folder. And that's all there is to it. We now have used AnnieMap to load a GPX file from the internet. We've set the parameters of how we want the map to look and feel. We have added waypoints to program how the camera flies overhead. And we've actually run the animation and recorded it and saved it to a video file. If I come over to my downloads folder, where we had just saved that, you can see that there's the GPX file that we started with, and we now have a 120 megabyte QuickTime file that if we load this and have a look at the inspection, we can see that we've generated a video at 60 frames per second that lasts for 1 minute long. That's all there is to it. That's the introduction to how to use AnnieMap to load GPS data and animate